This is Chief Inspector Jack Pachuta from MysteriesOnTheNet.com. I'm still here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Brumder Mansion. Now, we've been going through the way to write the perfect murder mystery party. I want you to think about something. You could come here to the Brumder and write your murder mystery party. I conduct mystery writing boot camps here in Milwaukee, and by the time you leave, you will have the plot for your very own murder mystery party. Just go to MysteryWritingBootcamp.com and you can find all about it. Let's talk about the suspect profiles. Now, we've talked about suspects already. Now we're going to start to put a little meat on the bones of those suspect profiles. First, let's talk about the parents' names and their occupations. Now, names and occupations have an impact upon your plot, especially the occupations. Let me give you an example. In my New Year's Eve mystery, which is called Murder Plays a Sour Note, the band leader is named Lou Gombardo. Now, you understand the play on words with that one, but let me tell you about the name of the orchestra. His band is called the Loyal Geraniums. Why? Well, because Lou's mother was a florist, and she appreciated people who were very loyal. So, the Loyal Geraniums. That has an impact on the plot. There might be hidden clues in those names. There might be occupations that apply to how the victim was killed. And because the parents were involved in certain knowledge and textbook information, there might be a tie to the actual murder. Second, where was the suspect born? If the suspect was born in the United States, that has one set of dynamics. If the suspect was born overseas in a foreign country, things overseas are not always the same here. An example of that, my wife is from England. We do not speak the same language, and I'll give you an example of that. In a building in America, what we call the first floor is called the ground floor in England, and what we call the second floor is called the first floor. So think about that. Even in the same language, supposedly the same language, we have different meanings. So where a person is born has an impact upon the way that that person sees the world and the way that those clues are delivered. Another example of that is Cyrillic alphabet. Some of the characters in the Cyrillic alphabet look like the characters in the Western alphabet, but they're not. They have a whole different meaning. So where a person is born has an impact on the mystery. Then siblings and where they are now. I don't want you to create too many siblings because too many siblings cloud a plot. They confuse things. However, siblings could also have an impact upon the way the suspect sees the world and the way the suspect acts. Older sister, younger brother. What is the older sister doing? What happened to the younger brother? Maybe the younger brother ran away and joined the circus, and there's something in the plot that involves an animal that could be from Africa. So that could have an impact upon the way that you structure your plot. Other important relationships and facts about those relationships. There could be a long-lost nanny that when a person was growing up, this nanny raised them. They were close to them. They knew everything about them and then left. And somehow that nanny either came back or someone who knew that nanny came back. Perhaps that person who knew the nanny was avenging some sort of wrong that happened to that nanny. So that if there are other important relations and other important relatives, those things can come into the plot. That will be tracked also when you are putting together the suspect profiles. How and when the suspects met the other suspects. Now, this goes back to what we talked about before. You know a little bit about some suspects, a lot about other suspects, nothing about certain suspects. But how the suspects met, what they know about each other, what kind of contact they have, that has to be built into the plot because there could be clues in there that determine who the perpetrator of the crime was. The history and the current relationships with the other suspects. So how they met, What is the relationship right now? Are they cordial friends? Did over the years one borrow money from the other and therefore they were at odds with each other? Did that fact that one owed money to the other have an impact on the murder? Maybe the murder was committed by mistake. Maybe one suspect was trying to kill another suspect, and instead the victim was the one who died. Those things come into play. How and when did each suspect meet the victim? Now, there are different ways that could happen. It could be a chance meeting. It could be bumping against each other on the bus or on a train. There could be a programmed meeting. Perhaps someone went to a formal dinner or a formal ball and they met each other there. Maybe they fell in love at first sight. But how did they meet each other? And why doesn't the suspect like the victim? So they might have met each other, they might have fallen in love, but for some reason they fell apart. So the reason that they don't like the victim becomes part of the motive. Again, there's no such thing as a good or a bad motive, just a motive. And this dislike that the suspect has for the victim has to be built into the plot. Where was the suspect at the time of the murder? One of the first questions that will be asked of each suspect when they're being questioned is, where were you at and whatever that time is that the murder occurred? Because what people will try to do is to pinpoint where people are and what the movements are and who could have been at the right place at the right time to commit the crime. In your suspect profiles, you need to put that down. Now, there is something here that you've got to consider, that if, for instance, the murder was committed by a booby trap or some kind of device, and the suspect didn't have to be present to actually be the murderer, then that time is really irrelevant. But that has to come out as the plot is evolving. And then each suspect has to have some facts that are hidden until they're questioned. Because in a good murder mystery, you want to have interaction. You want people to be able to talk to each other. You want them to be able to talk to the suspects. And by talking to the suspects, they'll be able to gain information that shouldn't come out at the very beginning of the investigation. So there are some facts that you want the suspects to hide until sometime during the investigation. And here's something that's very important. When you are talking about certain periods of history or certain areas in the world or certain kinds of animals or certain impacts of certain poisons or drugs, use real facts. Here's the reason why. Someone in your group will know the real fact. And if you invent something that isn't true, you'll be called out and it'll be pointed out. And you'll be blamed for the fact that this person who knows all about that subject matter didn't get the correct solution. So use real facts. I research my mysteries to make sure that historically and also regionally and also medically that they are accurate. The things that I put out really do occur and really are true. So those are your suspect profiles. Now you should have a good basis for continuing to put your mystery together. We'll talk about more in the next segment.